Peace be with you, I'm Uncle. Today is Lecture 5 of the Creation vs. Evolution lecture series, with the theme Challenges to Evolution, Part 1 Dilemmas of Universe and Life Origins. This episode will deeply explore evolution's fundamental scientific problems, including content on Big Bang Theory, thermodynamic laws, and life origins that may challenge what you've previously learned. I recommend enjoying it slowly with coffee or tea. The description area has a link to my Patreon with in-depth reflection questions and discussion materials for this lecture. Alright, let's get started. In the previous Lecture 4, we turned from scientific evidence to theological core, exploring the problem of death before death and the gospel foundation. We saw that accepting a millions-year historical view produces serious theological dilemmas. First, if there were hundreds of millions of years of death before Adam's sin, then death is not sin's consequence, destroying the theological foundation of Romans 5 verse 12 and 1 Corinthians 15 verses 21 to 22. Second, a God using hundreds of millions of years of suffering and death as his creation method is not the loving, almighty, wise God revealed in Scripture. Third, if when Genesis 1 verse 31 was written, Earth was already filled with hundreds of millions of years of fossils, the very good evaluation would be false. Fourth, if Adam is not a historical figure, or death is not sin's consequence, Christ's redemptive work loses its foundation. Fifth, accepting evolution leads to loss of human dignity, moral relativism, and historical social disasters, including eugenics movements, racism, and nihilism. We established that young Earth creationism is not only an interpretive issue but a necessary position for defending gospel truth. Now we've seen that accepting evolution is theologically catastrophic. But does evolution itself as a scientific theory stand up? In this lecture and the next, we'll deeply examine evolution's fundamental dilemmas. This lecture will focus on three major challenges at the non-biological level: the Big Bang theory of universe origins, energy laws, especially the second law of thermodynamics, and biogenesis law of life origins. We'll see that evolution not only contradicts Scripture but also contradicts observational science. Evolution is not merely a biological theory, it's a worldview. Evolution's historical narrative requires life to develop from simple to complex, but this story faces insurmountable scientific dilemmas at the two starting points of universe and life origins. Young Earth creationists believe evolution's proponents disguise their theory as scientific fact. Evolution's assumptions are built on the foundation that Earth is billions of years old. Without this extended time frame, evolution's historical narrative would completely collapse. Evolution's worldview requires us to accept three basic claims. First, the universe from nothing to something. The universe, including space, matter, and energy, must originate from a purposeless natural process like the Big Bang. Second, life from nothing to something. This is called abiogenesis or chemical evolution. Life must spontaneously generate from non-living matter. Third, life from simple to complex. Simple life must evolve into all complex species through mutation and natural selection. Young Earth creationism's view is that the first 2 points are logically impossible, and the third is unverified by observation. Here are two critical questions worth deep reflection. First, if evolution must depend on billions of years to appear credible, is time itself being treated as a magical factor? Do you think unlimited time can make a logically impossible event possible? Second, science is built on regular and repeatable observations. Why do evolutionists require us to believe that events occurred in the past that today's science has negated, such as life from non-life? Big Bang theory is the foundation of old Earth theory and evolution. Young Earth creationism points out that the Big Bang producing a highly ordered universe as a disordered explosion is extremely unreasonable. The mainstream scientific community accepts Big Bang theory, believing the universe began from an invisible point and evolved all design and regularity over billions of years. But we need to think about explosion's nature. Any explosion causes chaos and disorder. For example, a major explosion at North America's Mount St. Helens caused terrible destruction and chaos. This is explosion's nature, destroying order, creating chaos. But Big Bang theory requires us to believe that a massive disordered explosion could produce all the universe's design and complexity. This is logically unimaginable. Young Earth creationism's view is that all the universe we observe exhibits regularity and order, which aligns with God creating heaven and earth. The second law of thermodynamics is one of physics' basic laws. It describes energy's irreversible trend, posing a fundamental obstacle to evolution. This law stipulates that in any isolated system, all things tend toward disorder and decay. This is called entropy increase. Entropy is a physical quantity measuring a system's disorder degree. The entropy increase law shows that nature's spontaneous processes always proceed toward increasing entropy. This directly conflicts with evolution. Evolution requires biological systems to develop from simple to complex, a process toward higher order. This trend from lower to higher directly opposes the natural trend stipulated by the entropy increase law. Simply put, the second law of thermodynamics tells us things naturally become increasingly chaotic, while evolution says things naturally become increasingly ordered. This is a fundamental contradiction. Evolutionists often argue that Earth is an open system receiving solar energy and can overcome entropy increase. They say that as long as there's energy input, order can increase. Young Earth creationism's response is that this is insufficient. Energy input only increases disorder unless there's intervention of design, blueprint, and mechanism. Let me give an example. Place a brand new car in a garage for 100 years. Even if sunlight can shine into the garage providing energy, the car will only rust and age, not improve. Sunlight won't automatically upgrade the car or make it more complex. Similarly, in our bodies, cells constantly operate receiving energy from food, but ultimately all age and die. Energy itself cannot reverse entropy increase. It also requires precise design and mechanism. Photosynthesis is an example. Plants can use solar energy to make sugar, but this requires extremely complex biochemical mechanisms. This mechanism itself is evidence of design. Before we enter life origins, let me first address a common question. Some ask, hasn't radiometric dating already determined Earth has a billions-year history, proving evolution's time frame? Creationists point out that radiometric dating is built on three unverifiable assumptions and is therefore unreliable. These three assumptions are, first, initial conditions are known assuming radioactive elements initially contained only parent elements, no daughter elements. Second, decay rates are constant, assuming radioactive decay rates never changed over billions of years. Third, closed system, assuming no contamination or loss of external materials over long history. None of these three assumptions can be verified because scientists cannot go back to confirm the past. Moreover, as we discussed in detail in Lecture 3, evidence from various scientific branches like carbon-14 in diamonds, dinosaur soft tissue, Earth's magnetic field decay all strongly indicate Earth's age is only thousands of years. Without billions of years, evolution's history completely collapses. Evolution on the question of life origins, abiogenesis or chemical evolution, requires us to believe life naturally arose from non-living matter. Modern science observes that all life comes from existing life. This is called the law of biogenesis. This is a scientific law verified by countless experiments. Historically, people believed in spontaneous generation, like believing garbage produces rats, rotting meat produces maggots. But these beliefs have been proven wrong by experiments. 17th century Italian physician Francesco Redi's experiments proved rotting meat cannot produce maggots. Maggots hatch from eggs laid by flies. This simple but classic experiment fundamentally overturned the concept of spontaneous generation. 19th-century French scientist Louis Pasteur further proved experimentally that even microorganisms cannot spontaneously generate. They must come from existing microorganisms. The law of biogenesis became modern biology's cornerstone. However, evolution's basic premise is that life must naturally arise from non-biological matter. This actually requires us to believe that events occurred in the past that today's science has negated. Evolutionists have a conceptual contradiction on life origins. On one hand, they accept the law of biogenesis, acknowledging life can only come from life. On the other hand, they claim that in the distant past, life naturally arose from non-living matter. This is a double standard. Evolution treats extremely long time as one of its core concepts. Evolutionists believe a very long time can make an idea possible. They view time as a magical factor. Without sufficient time, how could evolution become possible? But young Earth creationism's view is that even given millions of years for a single cell like an amoeba to develop into humans, this assumption is still absurd in probability. In fact, the theory of human origin and development is evolution's most basic theory. Even the complex structure needed to compose a single cell has an absurd probability of random combination forming life. Creationists point out that complex organisms cannot naturally arise from non-living matter, inorganic matter, but can only arise from existing life. Let's look at the numbers. The simplest protein molecule consists of about 150 amino acids arranged in a specific sequence. The probability of randomly combining to produce a functional protein is about 10 to the negative 164th power. Mathematicians tell us that events with probability less than 10 to the negative 50th power are practically impossible. And the simplest living cell requires hundreds of different proteins to exist simultaneously and operate coordinately. This complexity far exceeds what random processes can produce. In 1953, Miller and Urey conducted their famous experiment attempting to simulate the primitive atmosphere producing amino acids. They indeed produced some amino acids, which evolutionists viewed as evidence of life's origin. But creationists point out this experiment's problems. First, what was produced was a harmful mixture requiring human intervention to separate amino acids. Second, their assumed primitive atmosphere composition was later proven wrong. Third, even if amino acids can be produced, living cells are still impossibly distant. From amino acids to proteins, from proteins to living cells, each step requires extremely precise information and complex mechanisms. Random processes cannot produce this information. The universe's fine-tuning phenomenon provides powerful support for creationism. It points out that the universe's basic parameters and physical laws' precise values must be set with extreme precision for life to exist. Many conditions in the universe are highly precise for human survival. If these parameters deviate slightly, life's existence would become impossible. Let's look at some examples. There are four fundamental forces in the universe: gravity, electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. Their strengths must be precisely set. If the ratio of electromagnetic force to gravity differs slightly, stars cannot exist. Stars' formation and stable burning depend on these two forces' precise balance. Gravity gathers matter together, electromagnetic force resists this gathering. If this balance deviates slightly, stars either cannot form or will immediately collapse or explode. Strong nuclear force determines atomic nuclei stability. Strong nuclear force is the force binding protons and neutrons in atomic nuclei. If it deviates slightly, atomic nuclei cannot be stable, and life cannot exist. If strong nuclear force were slightly stronger, protons would bind too tightly, hydrogen would all convert to helium, and the universe wouldn't have enough hydrogen to form water. If strong nuclear force were slightly weaker, atomic nuclei would disintegrate, and no elements besides hydrogen would exist. Carbon atoms must exist at precise energy levels to enable complex chemical reactions needed for life. This is British astronomer Fred Hoyle's argument. Hoyle was originally an atheist, but when he discovered carbon nucleus resonance's precise fine-tuning, he said this strongly supports intelligent design rather than blind natural processes. Carbon is life's foundational element. All known life uses carbon as its skeleton. Carbon is produced inside stars through helium atom fusion, but this process requires extremely precise energy level resonance. If this energy level deviates slightly, the universe wouldn't have enough carbon, and life would be impossible. Hoyle calculated that this energy level's precision must reach an astonishing degree. He therefore concluded that some superintellect has monkeyed with physics, chemistry, and biology. Intelligent design theory argues that compared to directionless processes like natural selection, the explanation that some supernatural intelligence designs certain features of the universe and organisms is obviously better. Anything observed exhibiting design traces must be created by a designer. For example, an oil painting, a textbook, a table cannot naturally arise. When we see a painting, we don't think paint randomly splashed on canvas produced it. We naturally deduce there was a painter. Faced with the universe's extreme complexity and fine-tuning phenomenon, creationists believe we can be certain a design must have an intelligent designer. Though intelligent design theory avoids explicitly identifying the designer as God, many supporters consider intelligent design a form of creationism. Some non-theists like Brandon Carter and Rees propose the multiverse hypothesis, believing infinite universes exist, and one will happen to be successfully fine-tuned. This response is a conceptual escape. The multiverse hypothesis itself lacks empirical evidence support and is scientifically an unverifiable inference. We've never observed any other universe and have no method to verify the multiverse's existence. This hypothesis only pushes the design problem to another more complex, unobserved system. Why should we believe a hypothesis that there are countless keys in a room, one of which happens to open this door, rather than accept that the universe we observe was created by a transcendent intelligent designer? The multiverse hypothesis requires much more faith than believing in a creator. Let me address another common question here. Since intelligent design theory seems so reasonable, why does the mainstream scientific community still generally view it as pseudoscience? The mainstream scientific community views intelligent design as pseudoscience because it challenges science's naturalistic methodology. Naturalism insists science can only seek natural causes to explain everything and cannot appeal to supernatural explanations. Though intelligent design poses powerful challenges to evolution, it's criticized for lacking empirical evidence support and refusing to make clear distinctions from the young Earth creationism behind it. However, creationists believe this attitude excluding design explanations is itself a philosophical presupposition, not scientific necessity. When evidence clearly points to design, refusing to consider a designer's existence is putting philosophy above evidence. Evolutionists believe design visible in organisms is the product of blind mechanisms. However, cells and DNA's extreme complexity are huge obstacles evolution cannot explain. All organisms are composed of cells. The human body consists of over 100 trillion cells. Scientists discovered each cell is an extremely complex universe containing trillions of molecules. Cells are not simply a blob of gelatinous substance but a highly organized microfactory with energy production systems, protein manufacturing systems, quality control systems, transport systems, communication systems, and DNA storage and replication systems. Cell complexity far exceeds any human-made factory. Many systems within cells, such as bacterial flagella or eyes, if lacking any component, the entire system cannot function. Such systems cannot form through gradual evolution. This is biochemist Michael B's concept of irreducible complexity. Irreducible complexity means a system requires all components to exist simultaneously to function. Removing any component, the system completely loses function. Such systems cannot be produced through Darwinian gradual evolution because intermediate stages have no function and won't be preserved by natural selection. Bacterial flagella are a classic example. This is a molecular machine containing about 40 different proteins, with a rotary motor, drive shaft, propeller, structured like a human-made outboard motor. All parts must exist simultaneously and be precisely assembled to function. Missing any component, the flagellum cannot rotate. There's no known gradual evolutionary pathway that can produce this system. One biologist reported that regarding how a cell operates, all that we know is still a mystery. Where nerve cells go, we still cannot know. This acknowledges life's mystery yet denies the designer's existence. This is a contradictory attitude. When we face such profound complexity, the most natural inference should be that there's an intelligent designer. Deoxyribonucleic acid, abbreviated DNA, is life's blueprint, containing all the information needed for our bodies and life's continuation. DNA information's extreme complexity is far more complex than any intelligent design humans currently know, like computers. The human genome contains about 3 billion base pairs, storing information equivalent to 1,000 encyclopedias. This information isn't randomly arranged but precisely coded instructions directing each protein's synthesis, each cell's function, the entire organism's development. DNA's astonishing genetic information proves life is bestowed by the Creator. Such complex information cannot be randomly generated. Contrasting human technology with biological complexity clearly shows intelligent design traces. Modern scientists' work imitating human body engineering is still a very new field. For example, artificial functions compared to eyes in computers. Human eye design far exceeds any human-made camera. The human eye can autofocus, automatically adjust aperture size, see in extremely low light, and simultaneously process complex information like color, movement, depth. The brain's visual processing system is even more astonishing. Even the most advanced computers cannot fully simulate the human eye and brain's visual processing capabilities. The human brain is calculated by scientists to have the complexity of over 30 billion nerve cells. Each nerve cell can connect with thousands of other nerve cells, forming an extremely complex network. If the human brain just randomly evolved, how can computers far simpler than the brain operate in an orderly manner? Computers are intelligent design products, requiring engineers to carefully design each circuit, each program. If simple computers need design, how can the incomparably complex human brain be a random process's product? Let me address a third common question here. A famous atheist once asked, if the universe weren't so fine-tuned, what could we do? Do you think if the universe truly weren't fine-tuned, could we still discuss this question? What does this reveal about God's attributes like omniscience, omnipotence, wisdom? The answer is obvious. If the universe weren't fine-tuned, life could not exist at all. We couldn't even raise the question. That we can think, discuss, question itself proves the universe is precisely fine-tuned. This fact cannot be used as a reason to refute the fine-tuning argument but is evidence supporting it. Fine-tuning evidence strongly proves that the Creator is transcendent, as Romans 1 verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." Romans 1 verse 20. We've seen that evolution faces irreconcilable conflicts with scientific facts and logic on three fundamental questions of universe, energy, and life origins. First, Big Bang Theory requires us to believe a disordered explosion can produce a highly ordered universe, violating logic. Second, the second law of thermodynamics stipulates all things tend toward disorder and decay, while evolution requires things to develop from simple to complex, a direct contradiction. Third, the law of biogenesis proves life can only come from life, while evolution claims life spontaneously arose from non-living matter, violating established scientific law. Fourth, the universe's extreme fine-tuning phenomenon, including fundamental forces' precise ratios in carbon nucleus resonance's precise energy levels, all point to an intelligent designer, not blind random processes. Fifth, cells in DNA's irreducible complexity proves these systems cannot be produced through gradual evolution but must be intelligent design products. Evolution requires us to believe the universe naturally arose from absolute nothingness, life spontaneously arose from non-living matter violating the law of biogenesis, and order spontaneously arose from chaos violating the second law of thermodynamics. These aren't small problems but fatal dilemmas evolution fundamentally cannot resolve. Without a billions-year timeframe, evolution's history completely collapses. And as we saw in Lecture 3, scientific evidence strongly supports the young Earth worldview. In the next Lecture 6, we'll continue exploring evolution's challenges, but this time focusing on the biological evolution level. We'll deeply analyze evolution's two main mechanisms, mutation and natural selection, and their limitations, proving they cannot achieve macroevolution. We'll also examine one by one the insufficiency of key transitional fossil evidence in evolution, including Archaeopteryx, whale evolution series, horse evolution series, and human evolution, to support the biblical view that organisms were created according to their kinds. Let's continue exploring. My channel hopes to focus on topics that churches find difficult to explore in depth, or topics that are more profound, more tedious, yet very important. I warmly welcome fellowships or Sunday schools to use these videos. If you need any particular topics, please let me know. I can also provide some training support. Regarding some common questions and reflections, the description area has a link to my Patreon members area for your reference and deeper understanding. If you want to know more about today's information or other content, please leave comments below. Thank you for your support. I hope you'll subscribe, enable notifications, and share to support this channel's continuation. You can also learn more at my Patreon. Let us together know God, think about faith, and live out Christ.